Hi, this is Kyle Higgins, and you're listening to the Geekcast Radio Network.
You can have the burgers if you want.
Shit. Let's go. Out. Mine's bigger than yours.
Big enough to throw a bullet through this door and you as well.
Boy, I put one through your ear.
You think it's the first time I had a gun pointed at me?
No. Could be your last, though.
I'm guessing you know who I am. I can guess who you are, at least which team you play for. All of which indicates you're not gonna shoot me.
No, I ain't.
There you go.
You are now on the inside of what I like to call the circle of trust. We are all connected in the great circle of life.
You know something, Bert? What? I think you and I are going in circles.
It feels like we're going in circles.
The circle is now complete. When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master.
Because it's a circle.
Yeah, we heard about the circle. Yes, we're familiar with shape.
Hi, this is Chuck.
This is Greg.
And this is Dan, and we are Talking in Circles, brought to you by the Geekcast Radio Network, a podcast that loves big bucks and cannot lie, even though other podcasts may deny, we tell the truth. So, anyways, thank you for joining us for this week for episode 15. I realize I never say the episode number, so I'm thinking maybe I should start doing that. Though, I think you know what episode you're on because you have to click on it. So, I don't know. I'm debating it.
Episode number 42 will blow people's minds.
It is the meaning of life.
You're dorky if you got that reference.
We have almost 3 times as many episodes as Star Wars. I mean, how awesome are we?
And we have not gone back and retooled the old ones yet, so there you go.
Yes, we didn't put a ghost of Greg standing next to the other ghosts.
I've almost debated going back to some of our earlier episodes and adding in pooping stories, since those have been very popular, but I have not done that. But anyways, regarding that, how's the week been going for you guys?
Not too bad. I guess can't complain too much, but I do have this really annoying split lip that just comes from, like, you know, your lips drying out in the wintertime or whatever. I've had it forever and I can't get rid of it. And
so you just tore your lip off? It's like,
yeah. Well, it seems to heal a little bit, and then sometimes when I open my mouth to eat or yawn or something, it breaks open and it like hurts like hell. But so I went and looked in the mirror today, and there was like this split down it, and there's a little bit of blood there, and I felt like one of those Reapers from the Blade 2 movie.
That's the Del Toro one.
Yeah, I felt like my jaw was just going to open up in half, and like this weird little like tongue was going to come out. I don't know, kind of weird.
Greg, how's your weekend going? You feeling like a zombie this week with
I always feel like a zombie in the morning. I don't know what the hell it is. When I wake up, it feels like an elephant just sat on my face.
Sorry about that, Greg.
Yeah, I know. Speaking about that too, and also going along with your beginning, I don't really feel like sharing this, but since it kind of relates,
don't let us twist your arm now.
Since they kind of relate, I'll reveal a secret. What do they call it? Like one of your little dark secrets, or like
confessional.
Well, kind of a confessional.
Dashboard confessional.
One of the people that I would like to make out with or do some other things with. Nicki Minaj.
Swear to God, if you say me, I'm driving the house and punching you right now.
Nicki Minaj, for some reason, does something for me. It's kind of weird. I don't know what the hell that is. It kind of creeps me out a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't. She to me.
That also goes along with your asses thing and an elephant sitting on my face.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, Greg learned something about himself this week.
And the more you know.
She looked especially good on that red carpet a couple days ago, where she wasn't looking all creepy weird with all those cotton candy wigs and whatnot.
Yeah, I just find her annoying, I guess.
Just make sure you wear earplugs all the time, that's all.
Oh, yeah, her voice can get really annoying. She puts on some weird accent. It's like she's trying to be like Madonna or something.
And I feel like when I hear her songs, I feel like it's a parody of her, but I realize, oh no, it's actually her. Like, oh, Weird Al made a song making fun of Nicki Minaj. Oh no, it actually is Nicki Minaj doing your own song. So
awkward.
But besides that craziness, Chuck, have you been up to anything else this week?
I have. Not a whole lot, but I did get to see a movie. I borrowed this from Greg. He was gracious enough to lend me a couple of movies that I've been wanting to see. And
some that you haven't.
The one that I got to watch this week was Pacific Rim.
Nice.
Figured
good choice.
That one. It was a good choice.
I feel like I've joined this elite group now that has seen Pac Rim. I know you guys have both seen it, and I've been dying to see it since it came out last year, but for one reason or another, I was never really able to.
All I can think of now that you called it Pac Rim is like Pac-Man Rim Job.
I'm not going to name the episode that.
Damn it!
Sorry I brought that up.
iTunes will reject that.
Oh. Damn you, iTunes. They accept Vladimir pooping.
Yeah.
Okay, so Pacific Rim. Firstly, I will say I liked it a lot. I am currently building my own Jaeger. 50 diesel engines per muscle strand.
I'm currently drinking my own Jaeger.
But how cool would it be to have one of those things, honestly? Like, those things are so freaking cool. I have nowhere to hide it, though.
I think that would be awesome to take to work in the morning.
Yeah, like
people getting in your way, step on them.
I would totally take that thing to work. You know, you make sure you got to lock it though.
Yeah,
if you're in a bad neighborhood, you know, your little keypad. Make sure.
At the end of the day, if you see somebody finally making it all the way to the top to get into the damn thing.
The crappy thing is when you like come out from like the movie theater and you don't know where you parked it.
It's like there's like a bunch of other Jaegers next to you. Damn it!
Why do they always have to park so close?
It's just funny because I was thinking back to the old X-Men cartoon. I was like, I don't have a tree tall enough to hide this behind. Like the Sentinel hiding behind the tree.
Or somebody's house.
Yeah, really. But one thing I noticed was didn't the head kind of look like Master Chief from Halo a little bit?
Yeah, I could see that.
I thought that was kind of cool. And the kaijus really said Cloverfield to me. Like, they looked so much like the Cloverfield monster. So yeah, a lot of inspiration from other things in this movie and some very, very direct lineage that's highly visible. But that didn't bother me at all. I could see how maybe it would affect some people's opinions. Like, they've seen a lot of this before, but I just think it's such a cool factor that it totally outweighs that. It's a very, very fun movie, like just pretty much pure action flick. I mean, aliens versus robots. I mean, come on, no holds barred. Absolutely love this concept.
I think it's an extra dimensional being, Chuck. It's not an alien. It's from another dimension.
It's a freaking alien. You said you wanted an alien. They're going to give you an alien.
Came here illegally. It's an alien.
They don't make green cards that big. But I love the whole plot of this. I mean, I thought it was a fantastic idea for a movie. And before I forget, too, I love the quick blink and you miss it moment kind of in the beginning there with the huge pile of kaiju crap with all the machines digging in it and stuff. And the news headline says, Kaiju excrement poison city. I was cracking up. I'm like, that's so funny.
Was it in a bucket?
I thought that too. I'm like, suppose you're a kaiju. You're not finding a bucket big enough to hold that. It's not working out. I like the detail they did with the monsters too, like having the little parasite creatures that they found on them and the organs and the tissue that they would harvest from the dead ones and stuff, and like Ron Perlman's character and some of the people that worked for him. And I thought he was funny too, like it was like classic Ron Perlman. They brought him in and like okay, you're that guy. It's not like they made the role and who are we going to get to play this? It's like, that is Ron Perlman.
Knowing Del Toro, he just wrote a part for Perlman. This is where we're putting Perlman.
Yeah, and his gold boots.
Did you see the little scene at the end, by any chance?
Yeah, I didn't at first, though. And I was IMDbing some stuff about the movie, and I was like, oh man, there's an extra scene, so I watched it like on YouTube. But yeah, that was pretty funny. I kind of wish I kept watching, through the credits and stuff. But
I remember I saw that in theaters, and I didn't know there was an extra scene, but I was leaving, and a lot of people were still staying there, and I'm like, wait, what's going on? Because someone usually stays for the credits. I actually ended up going to the bathroom and coming back, and the credits were still going because of all the special effects people. And then I saw it. So
there wasn't many special effects in that, though.
No, I think that one scene.
The Jaegers were totally real.
That would be awesome.
I mean, with all that good stuff, I will say, I guess one kind of issue I had with it was I think it moved way too quickly in the beginning. I know that's kind of necessary, but I felt like it glossed over some pretty important stuff. And I felt like they were jumping right into it, right in the middle. Just fine, it kind of works for the movie, but I felt like I would have enjoyed it even more if they fleshed out some of those things in the beginning, like him and his brother, and how did they discover the breach point? How did they know it was a wormhole and that it wasn't just a bunch of creatures that live beneath the surface? And just some of those early battles with the kaijus, they seemed like they were kind of flipping through that as if you were already familiar with it, and I guess I would like to see more of that. And I know there's a graphic novel that kind of goes over some of that stuff beforehand, so I might actually consider checking that out because that sounds kind of cool. Did you guys ever read the graphic novel or anything, or hear anything about that?
I didn't hear anything at all about that. That's brand new to me.
Yeah, I didn't know there's a graphic novel.
Yeah, I just kind of stumbled across it. I didn't really read anything about it, but it just said that they explained some of that stuff in the beginning that they, went through really quickly. It gives it more of a, kind of sets the scene a little more for the beginning. So that might be pretty interesting if you're a fan of that movie. So
sure, yeah, I can have some of the plot the movie did not have.
Yeah, but I wanted to say too that I found it kind of funny that their plan in the final scene to seal the breach was basically strap a nuke on the back of a Jaeger and set it off in the breach. So I'm thinking, okay, so basically it's a Jaeger bomb.
Very nice.
I like the unspoken pun there.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of funny.
Those things are disgusting, by the way.
Yeah, isn't it Red Bull or something?
Yeah, it's Red Bull and Jaeger. It's gross. I'm not a big fan of energy drinks to begin with. It tastes like what the hell is it?
Dying? It tastes like dying?
Yeah. It's really gross because you toss the shot there and then you have to get it down as quickly as possible because it's rising at about 1 billion miles an hour, and I don't drink that fast.
It does sound like it would seal a breach.
Seals your mouth up for the next 10 minutes trying to drink that damn thing.
But I thought it was funny, here we are again with a disaster / sci-fi movie that elects to solve its problem by setting off a nuke. So many of them seem to do. A nuke solves everything, It's fine. It's perfectly fine. It doesn't take anything away from the movie, but I figured just for a little fun thing, I'd come up with some alternative solutions to the problem.
Okay.
So I have a few of them, and I think if anybody else had any, they can write in the comments on the Geekcast radio site. But my first solution would be a laser net, like the one from. Do you remember the thing from Resident Evil?
Yeah.
And the guy was in that chamber, and it came through and it diced him into 1,000 pieces.
That would actually, yeah.
I think they should just put that right over the breach hole. And as soon as they come out of it, it just dices them into 1,000 pieces.
Sushi for everybody.
Just leave it there. They'd be like, F this planet. This is no fun at all. My second solution, I said, okay, why can't we just seal it up with a shitload of Gorilla Glue? That stuff's supposed to, seal everything. And then my third one, this might be the best one yet. I would put 4 giant speakers tuned to the exact frequency of the wormhole fluctuations. And then I would just have them blasting Justin Bieber songs whenever they try to come through. They wouldn't even want to come through the breach. They would just say, man, I really feel sorry for this planet.
To make it extra effective, you put the song on with Justin Bieber and the one where Nicki Minaj is in it as well.
You could use her butt to seal it up as well.
that also.
Unless the monsters like big butts.
Well,
and they don't lie.
Some of them, I could see that. I mean, they do seem to enjoy curves.
Yeah, so if anybody has any other funny alternative solutions, that would be those would be welcome. But I had a quick question for you guys. One thing I didn't understand from the movie was they did explain how, like, when the guy drifted with part of the kaiju brain, he said that they go from, like, world to world, kind of like inhabiting that, like, killing off the species that inhabit it, and they kind of take it over, take the resources, whatever. Is their world, like, sort of this nexus with all these portals? Like, how do they have access to all these worlds? I wish that was something that they kind of explained, and maybe they touch on it in the graphic novel, I don't know, but I mean, did you guys catch something that I didn't? Or?
No, I didn't really explain it. I assumed it was some sort of technology that they had.
I'm going to go with Dan, because I really don't have an answer for you, Chuck.
Yeah, and I didn't really realize when I was watching it, but apparently they live on a water world where they're, like, completely underwater.
Oh, God. Do they have Kevin Costner there? No wonder why they're trying to escape. I do like that movie, though. That's kind of sad. I do enjoy that movie.
He was peeing on the kaijus before they were
trying to lick it off them.
So, yeah, there's my... that was my fun movie of the week. I really enjoyed it. So thanks, Greg, for letting me borrow that.
No problem. I hope you like the other one I let you borrow, too. That's another Del Toro film that I really enjoy.
Yeah, I'll probably be... good old Gizmo Del Toro.
Which one is that? Pan's Labyrinth?
No, I haven't seen Pan's Labyrinth. I have to catch that one.
Okay.
I have not seen that one.
It's Hellboy 2, and I'm hoping to get around to it this week, so maybe I'll might have a review of that next week. But
yeah, I do. I'm a big fan of Hellboy 2. I like the first Hellboy a good amount, but I thought the second one was actually an improvement over the first one.
Second was definitely better. The ending of the first one kind of left a little bit to be desired, but the second one was really good.
Yeah. That final, like, action sequence, on, like, was it a clock or gears or something? I forget, but
well, he loves his clocks and gears.
I thought it was a secret there. Greg was whispering, "It's really good."
It is.
Don't tell anyone.
But I guess I'll go into what I've been watching, and I don't think you can get two movies that are more polar opposite than what you've been talking about and the movie I'm going to mention. And
Atlantic Rim. Damn it!
Wow.
They already have a sequel.
I guess I couldn't call it Indian Rim. It'd be
someone would get offended.
Yeah. People wouldn't understand. The movie I'm talking about is Under the Skin, and I'm not going to go in depth with it because I have a review on geekcastradio.com. Also, I was just on the In Session Film podcast that was just released last week. I'll link to it on our page and also put it on Facebook, so you can find that at insession.film.com, who I should also thank as a new sponsor to our show, and they've been gracious enough to run our ad as well, so thank you for that. But
sweet.
So if you are listening to us because of In Session Film, we welcome you to our humble abode. Anyways, the movie Under the Skin.
It's a room with a bucket.
Bathroom breaks are really short.
And Under Skin is a movie I personally love, but would recommend to pretty much no one unless you're like a huge film buff. And what was interesting on the In Session Film was that I really enjoyed the movie, and JD, who's on the host of that show, he was not a fan, so it was an interesting discussion. But the premise of it is that Scarlett Johansson plays this alien, but he doesn't.
This is the one where she's naked, right?
Yeah, that's
it's the only reason I know of this film.
Yeah, that does.
Greg's like, cut to the chase with it.
How was the nude scene, Dan?
It would not disappoint you, Greg. But I think you would go crazy waiting for it, though, because the film is very, it's very mundane. Like, it's very tonally. There's not much dialogue. A lot of people consider it artsy fartsy, kind of pretentious, maybe. Thinking of something like 2001: A Space Odyssey or Tree of Life or something, things along that nature, where the plot's not really stated. There's some awkwardness to it. But I, as a person who watches a lot of film, and this is maybe a movie a few years ago I didn't really enjoy. I may have not have enjoyed. But as I've learned more about movies and I've researched them more, I kind of can find some appreciation for kind of the technique behind it. And also, I just love the visuals, some of the amazing visuals I've never seen before. And also has a really great score that's really, it keeps you on edge, and it's very unnerving. Scarlett Johansson is this alien who goes around kind of picking up hijackers and bringing them back to this lair, and you don't really know why. Don't know what she's doing, or really have a great understanding of much of what's going on. But there's a lot of good themes that go into it, especially it touches on gender roles and touches on humanity as a whole. Really, it's just a movie that kind of stuck with me, and glad I saw it. And like I said, as a review on geekcastradio.com. I would say, Greg, you could probably go see it for the nudity, but I don't think you guys
can probably find that online.
Yeah, I'm going to say you can just search Google or Mr. Skin or something like that. I don't think you guys would enjoy it too much, just because it is kind of it's a movie I purposely went to see it by myself, because I'm Carol would hate this, and she would be like, why are you dragging me to this stuff? So, but if you do like stuff like Terrence Malick or those Kubrick films, you may enjoy it. But to something I think you, Greg and Chuck, would both enjoy. I started watching a new TV series last week. I was off, so I caught up on a few things, and my wife and I got really into Justified, the FX TV series. Have any of you guys watched that?
No, I just know Timothy. How the hell do you say his last name? I don't think he says it Oliphant, because Oliphant's a town that's near me. I'm pretty sure he doesn't say it that way. I just know that he's in it, and he's kind of like a cop in the South or something.
Yeah, he's like a U.S. Marshal, and it's like a modern-day Western in a way. It's really great. If we did our badass bracket again, I would totally say we should have his character, Raylan Givens, in it. When I was watching it, I'm like, he's kind of like the country Jack Bauer in a way. He's in the sense that he's more laid back. He doesn't really get angry. He's just really just restrained with his badassness. If Clint Eastwood was soft spoken, it would be kind of that way. But he's there. He'll get hard when he needs to. Well, that's not.
All right. He also watched this Scarlett Johansson movie.
It's a great character too, because he has his badass moments, but he's also not invincible. He'll get beat up or he'll mess up, and it's really great. And there are a lot of great characters in it as well. It takes place in Kentucky, I believe, and he is this U.S. Marshal who kind of gets forced back to his own hometown. And as a kid growing up, he maybe wasn't someone people look to as a potential law enforcement, but he's there now. So there's just really a lot of tension between his family and other families, and he has issues with his father from the past, because his father was a criminal, and there's a lot going on. I finished the first 2 seasons, and the first season's pretty good, but the second season, I think it's really where it takes hold. There's a really great progression to the story. I'm not a big fan of episodic television where okay, this is the issue of the week, and by the end of this, it's going to be resolved, and same thing next week. And at first I'm like, oh, it's kind of doing that. But then I realized it's really not. It built on itself so well. Each episode has a piece to the puzzle, and it slowly builds. And you realize that all these things that maybe seem separate at first really come together slowly and surely. And by the last episode, it's just, I'm like, wow, I was just super impressed on how it all worked. And like I said, great acting, great action. I would highly recommend it to anyone. I'm looking forward to the 3rd season, getting caught up with that. So it's available currently for streaming on Amazon Prime. So if you have that, you can catch it out there. So like I said, I would highly, highly recommend that to really anyone. So, but I think that's all I've really been up to. Gregler, what have you been doing?
I am unfortunately going to offend another podcast on the Geekcast Radio Network. I saw G.I. Joe Retaliation. I liked the first G.I. Joe.
Really? I'm surprised.
Yeah, I did. I thought it was surprisingly good for all the bad stuff that I heard about it. I really enjoyed that one. The second one, complete piece of crap. The only redeeming qualities are Dwayne Johnson who does an awesome job in anything that he's in. And Bruce Willis is pretty freaking sweet. He's got a small part, but I like to see him. I don't think his part was extremely necessary, but I like to see him there. But oh my god, I don't think this movie, like, they had Channing Tatum in it again, but he was completely unnecessary, if you ask me. Like, there was a lot in the beginning of the movie that really could have been cut out. I don't know why we were trying to start up viewing this relationship and this rapport between Duke and that's Channing Tatum's character, and Roadblock, The Rock's character. I don't know why that needed to be set up, because, spoiler alert, they kill off Duke pretty damn early in the movie.
Well, did you hear the whole rumor? You know how it was like delayed for like 9 months?
No, I don't know any of the production behind the scenes type of stuff.
Well, it was set to come out like maybe 2 summers ago. Not last summer, but the summer before that, but it got delayed. And the thinking behind it was they wanted to go back and add in more scenes of Channing Tatum, because he was in 21 Jump Street, and that was a huge hit, and Magic Mike, and that was a big hit. So the theory is they went back to add in some of those additional scenes that you're talking about. And the bigger rumor is that possibly that he really isn't dead, because you kind of don't see a body, and
they don't show you a body at all, but.
But I mean, not that excuses it at all, but that's kind of one of the big reasons why those scenes really feel out of place.
I think they should have just cut them out all the way to begin with, and then just saved them for like the third movie if they wanted to, because the setup of him in the beginning is completely pointless. I think they were trying to use it as a motivation for the team to go after Cobra. But why do they need that motivation? Like, it wasn't like they were like remembering him every 2 seconds. There was like a little bit later in the movie where like, oh, okay, here's Duke's dog tag. And that was the only mention of him later in the film. I felt like the first part of the movie was kind of unnecessary. There were probably some parts in there that were probably that were good for it. The first part was not really essential in my mind. I felt like they really could have edited it down. I keep saying I feel like I'm repeating myself, but there were even scenes later in the film that I felt weren't necessary. And it was just searching for who the president actually is, because if you don't already know from watching the first one, the president is actually Zartan, the master of disguise, or whatever the hell his name is. Something that starts with a Z and Zart.
I think it's Zartan. Not that it matters. Yeah.
They find out pretty quickly that it is Zartan, so there's a lot of extra filler kind of stuff in there to prove that it's Zartan and whatnot.
Sounds like a Russian guy that spent too much time at the beach. Zartan.
What did you think of RZA playing an old Asian man?
Oh my god, he was awful. I had no idea who, like, he came, like, that started 20 minutes into the movie of him talking and going after. I'm like, what does this guy have to do with anything? And I'm like, oh wait, he's like the master for Snake Eyes, and they're trying to, like, and he was so difficult to understand. Like, I think he was trying to do an Asian accent or something.
Yeah.
But he was failing miserably, and I was just having trouble understanding him. By the way, I watched this movie twice because I was like, maybe I missed something on the way through, because I'm like, it can't just all be, it felt like a movie of filler. And then in the last 20 minutes, they kind of did like the main critical parts, but they did it all through dialogue explaining what was going on. Like, it wasn't developed throughout the movie of like finding out clues through action scenes and going from place to place. It was just Zartan as the president just kind of explaining through dialogue what was going on. And because the Joes were just trying to get rearrest Cobra Commander who got broken out and try and bag Zartan. But like, they just explained it in the last like 10 minutes all through dialogue. So it was ultra boring. They tried to make it interesting and kind of funny. It was a little bit funny. The Angry Birds thing was funny. But it just wasn't good. I feel like I'm rambling on now, but it just wasn't good.
I mean, I see what you're saying. I mean, I don't think the issues you're citing are wrong. I mean, I did like that movie. Not that it does have plot issues. It does make no sense in certain areas. I thought some of the action scenes were a little bit fun, like the not the rooftop, but the mountaintop, like wire scene. I like that. But that was
Also, I felt the movie was overproduced, and it really felt like a movie. Like it didn't take me into another world. It just felt like a produced movie. Sorry, I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, it does. It does feel kind of fake at times, but I did like some of the action scenes. I like some of the Firefly stuff, like with
the Firefly things were pretty cool at the beginning. And I also thought the really close gunfight was an interesting take. I'm not sure if they were fully successful with it, but I thought it was something different and cool in that way.
Yeah, but I don't think the issues you're stating are at all wrong. I really like actually the guy who played the president. I thought he was. I found him humorous.
Yeah.
At times, just how he had to play, the real president, and then he was actually playing Zartan, and it was I can't think of his name. He's like a character actor. I think he plays a president in a few things. It's like that's what he does. But yeah, I mean,
I thought the girl was really good in her role, Lady J. I thought that was a good character, but that was probably based on one scene and me being me.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that really don't like the whole entire subplot of what's the Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow.
Storm Shadow. Yeah, that was weird.
That, like we talked about, for those, RZA is a member of the Wu-Tang Clan, and he plays an old Asian man because I guess they couldn't find another one. I don't know, but
that whole thing of, spoiler alert, Zartan was the one that actually killed the master and everything. I thought that was just ridiculous, and I think they just wanted to go somewhere different with the characters, but they were like, oh crap, we already have it set this way. And I thought their story was much more interesting from the first one.
Chuck, have you seen the new G.I. Joe?
No, I haven't seen either of them, actually.
Watch the first one. Do not lay eyes on the second one.
See, I actually was not a fan of the first one, and I enjoyed the second one a little bit more, just because I thought the action had a little bit more physicality to it.
You guys are making this really hard for me.
You're just going to not watch either.
You're going to watch the middle one. You watch the third one. Or you go watch G.I. Joe, the movie from the 80s.
There you go. I might check them out at some point. I just haven't gotten around to it.
I don't think either of them are great films, but I don't know. I guess when I went into G.I. Joe Retaliation, I had so little expectations. The fact that there was actually competent moments, I'm like, oh, all right, this isn't that bad. I wouldn't say it's a good movie by any means. I mean, I have not seen the first one in quite a while, so maybe if I went back, I might enjoy it. I saw The Drive-In, which may be one of the most random combinations of movies ever. I saw G.I. Joe, then The Hurt Locker, and then Inglourious Bastards. I mean, it kind of go together, but in some ways they don't. They're all about war, I guess.
Yeah.
You been up to anything else?
There was just one other thing I wanted to mention really quick, since I was taking forever talking about G.I. Joe. I read the latest issue of X-Force. I really don't like the new team they have together. I think, Dan, you might actually like it because it's got Cable leading the team, and I've never been a big Cable fan.
I feel like I'm the only one. I feel like there's no one else that likes that character.
I like him when he's hooked up with Deadpool, but that's because I like Deadpool, but then Deadpool's kind of wearing thin on me. Even though they did do a nice revamp of the character with the good, bad, and the ugly, I think is what they named it. Either that or I'm just stuck on the Clint Eastwood movie. But anyway, I really had an issue with reading this last issue. I have an issue reading this last issue because the one character, the new character that they have, is called Mimi, and she's kind of she's really hard to explain because she's kind of like
from the Drew Carey Show.
No, it's spelled M-E-M-E, not M-I-M-I. But she's like this mutant that like controls electronics. I guess, and she's just kind of like a floating electronic head that can kind of play with all the electronics and cue into the internet and everything. But the way that they do her speech pattern, it's very difficult to understand what she's talking about, because it's just kind of, it's like incomplete sentences where words are missing. Just the essential main words are left. Like there's no articles or anything like that. But so I have a problem understanding her. But then they also have the character Mara, which is completely different from how I remember her being. Kind of rough, tough, intelligent leader of the mutants that live underground, the Morlocks. So, but she has a thing where she's like cursing every 2 seconds, which doesn't bug me because I curse a lot. But everybody else on the team was having problems with it, and Psylocke was like really. I think Psylocke scared her a little bit, so she kind of started using substitute words for her curse words, and they were really random, really weird words that kind of just plopped in there every once in a while. So I had a battle of characters like with weird speech patterns at this point, and it was really slow to get through the dialogue. And just want to throw it out there to all writers. If you're going to have characters like this, limit yourself to one character with weird speech patterns going on. I had the hardest damn time reading this book, and I'm like, I don't like half the characters in here anyway. Why? And now the dialogue's messed up. I don't care for the story too much. Why am I reading?
I remember, X-Force has gone through so many different changes, like when it started with Cable and back then 90s with Rob Liefeld and all that craziness, and then I remember it got revamped.
Who?
Yeah, I said the name that should not be said.
Him of which we do not speak.
And then I remember it got revamped. Was it like 2006 or so, or maybe a little bit later, maybe 2008 with it was like Wolverine,
Deadpool, Warpath.
Yeah, and they were the X-Men that would kill.
Yes, I liked that version.
The Archangel was pretty badass in that.
Yeah, where he's turned into more of the Apocalypse version. See, that's the team I liked, and then they kind of changed it up a little bit. I think they changed authors, and so it changed a little bit. And then that was all right. It was Psylocke, Storm, Puck, Spiral, and Bishop. But that only ran for like maybe 5 or 6 issues, and then they quickly switched over. And then there was another X-Force team of Cable, Forge, Boom Boom, and a couple others. So there was a couple issues of that one going on, and then all of a sudden it was like, bam! They slammed those two together to form the X-Force team that's going on now, and the whole thing with Psylocke and Phantom X was weird, and I don't really understand it. So I think that might be another issue that I'm having with this current run, is because I don't know how it got started and how I don't know how the relationship is working with Phantom X and Psylocke. So,
well, anything else before we take a break?
Yep, think we're good here.
All right, well, I think I'm all out of stuff too, so we're going to take a break, and when we come back, I teased it last week, and we're going to try to do it. We had a few people mention that they didn't think they could do it. Well, we'll try to pull it off as we try to count down our top 5 favorite comic book stories, so it'll be a challenge, but I think it's a challenge we can handle. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see you in a bit.
Every week on the In Session Film Podcast, you can expect to hear reviews on all of the latest movies, big films, small films, and everything in between. We'll also do top 3 segments relating back to our main review. We discuss all of the latest movie news and rumblings, as well as have movie series and other fun segments. And we always talk about the films that we're watching and why you should watch them or not watch them as well. If you want to learn more about the In Session Film podcast, check us out online at InSessionFilm.com. You can hear our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, TuneIn Radio, and so much more. In fact, you can listen to everything we have straight from our website. Again, that is InSessionFilm.com. Download our podcast, check us out, and come join us every week. We'd love to hear from you.
All right, and welcome back. And like I mentioned, we'll be counting down our top 5 comic book stories. And when it comes to this, it's a little bit hard. So we did put some parameters on this. So, for example, we tried to make these into specific arcs. So we're not going to just say X-Men or Superman because that's such an expansive amount of stories, it'd be impossible. So we tried to specify them as much as we could. But you do have some of those comics that are one continuous story. So those might be kind of combined and twisted. So we're gonna, play around with it a little bit, see how it is. And it was quite difficult to get it squared down to 5. And I'm sure, like Chuck has mentioned, and Greg, this is the list now, and give us a week or two, and I'm sure it'll change. But I guess, Greg, we'll let you start us off here. What's starting you off at number 5?
Well, I didn't really put mine in any order. Like my room, it's totally disheveled. But I think I'm going to start off with one that I think might cross over with you guys. I'm going to start off with Age of Apocalypse.
Yes, that is my number 1.
Nailed it! I just love the X-Men, and I love stories where they go off the ultimate, going off our normal view of the characters to this different world. And I think they did it right. You've got some characters that you know of as being good over on the other side with Apocalypse. You've got weird things going on, like, spoiler alert, but you should have read this already, of Magneto and Rogue have a kid together. Don't know how that happened, but they have a kid. It's got Sabretooth on the side of the good guys, Magneto on the side of the good guys, some amazing art, people dying left and right in this thing. They had a series not that long ago where the X-Men went off onto a different kind of timeline. I think they were trying to repeat the success of Age of Apocalypse, but I don't think they really hit it. They've revisited Age of Apocalypse a couple of times. They brought the Nightcrawler from this dimension into our worlds, and he kind of was joined up with the X-Force team that I really did enjoy in recent years. He was in that for a little bit, and that was amazing. And I think they had a limited series run where they revisited the Age of Apocalypse. So it's got a lot of force, and the stories were amazing. But yeah, Dan, do you want to add anything with maybe something a little bit more specific as opposed to my little random?
Sure. Well, I remember getting this. As a kid, I didn't read this, but I remember actually the figures for Age of Apocalypse that came out, because they had specific figures, and falling in love with those. And then years later, I got a great deal. We used to go to this comic book store called Night Owl, and I think the great deals that we got made it go out of business, because I got the entire set of Age of Apocalypse for like $40, and individual comics, not graphic novels, but the actual comics. So got it, ran it, and I just read through this. Like, I don't think I read a story this expansive so quickly before. I just love how it completely altered the entire universe and all the different takes, even the characters like the Hulk and other Fantastic Four, and how that changed. I also really like some of the new characters that they created, and I know this is kind of sacrilege because a lot of people hate this character, but I really did like the X-Man character. Just some of the craziness and just the brutalness of it, like with like Sugar Man, and who was just like
freaking Wolverine has one hand. One hand.
Yeah, one hand, and I just found the world really interesting. And like you said, I think Marvel's been trying to go back to this and redo this for such a long time. They literally have tried to they did like an expansive, like a 10-year reunion series, which continued the story after the end of the Age of Apocalypse, which was not nearly as good. It was some sort of magic. It just worked. The idea behind it makes a lot of sense. And it when you think about it, it's all rested upon the fact that the importance of one man, Charles Xavier, and the effect that he would have if he wasn't there. I think just taking those different dynamics and having Cyclops be bad and his brother Havoc, and I don't know, I just found it really interesting. And also, Apocalypse is one of my favorite villains. I'm staring at a big toy of him right now on my desk, and I know he's kind of, maybe some people might argue one note, he's just survival of the fittest, but that's what I kind of like about him. He's like apathetic towards everything. He's just about surviving, even more so than like Magneto. Like the scope of it was like gigantic. It was worldwide, from the Savage Land to Europe to everything. I just love the idea behind it. I remember even seeing like the maps of like who owned what territories and stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
it was just really, and I loved a lot of the covers. And I know a lot of people hate like the shiny covers, but I found them interesting because I'm.
That's not true, Dan. Rednecks love shiny covers.
Yeah.
I buy all the shiny covers.
I'm easily distracted. So, but yeah, that was my number one. But I have no issue talking about it now. I'm trying to think of the Age of Apocalypse, some of the stories that really stuck out. I even liked a lot of the prequel stories. I love what they did with Iceman. I remember thinking Iceman was kind of cool, but they made him in such almost like a broken figure, because I don't think he could go to human form. But he had more control over his ice powers. And I remember, there was just a lot of cool things. You should
see what they did to him in the X-Force.
Oh, really? I'll have to see that. And also, there's a lot of great characters. And Blink, too, a great character they created that they'll be in the new X-Men movie coming up. And she was in the Exiles with the Sabretooth as well. I think the best thing that they did after Age of Apocalypse was bringing those characters into Exiles, because they worked well. Blink's such an interesting character. Her power is really cool. So I'm excited to see her in the new movie. I doubt she'll have a big part of it, but the movie they're doing after Days of the Future Past will be, X-Men Apocalypse. So my assumption would be they'll be tying to this story, which would be really cool if they do that. So,
yeah,
you guys will be extremely upset with me, but I have not read Age of Apocalypse all the way through.
Well, I mean, there's a lot there. I know, like,
it is a lot.
I've read, I guess, like a couple parts of it, and I know the basic gist of it. But I have the graphic novels. I have the 4 books, and then I also have actually just got it. It's the prelude to Age of Apocalypse, just the stuff leading up to it. So I have the 5 books, and my goal is to definitely read it before that movie comes out. But that's kind of been on my list, so I'm sure once I read it, this top 5 list will probably change for me.
It'll take you a while to get through, Chuck.
And don't feel bad, because when I was coming up with this list, I did some research. I'm looking at some of the greatest stories ever, comic book stories are most notable ones, and I'm like, 30 comic book stories you should read before you die, and I've read like 5 of them. So I'm like, I am lacking. So, but I gotta buckle down and read more. I don't know.
I'm there with you, Dan.
So that was on my list, Chuck. So I guess I'll go to you. What is? I'm guessing you said you did number yours, correct?
Yes, I tried to rank mine, my top 5 as best I could. So my number 5 story is a DC story.
Boo, no,
I know there's a lot of no haterade here. I know there's a lot of great DC stories out there, obviously, and like most people, especially Batman stories, most people point to like Year One and Dark Knight Returns and stuff like that. For me, like I do love the team aspect of stuff a lot of times. So I did like a lot of the Justice League stuff. And one in particular that I really liked was Tower of Babel by Mark Waid. This was a great run that Mark Waid had on Justice League. Very well-known story, but in case you're not familiar with it or you don't remember it or whatever, it's basically about Batman having a contingency plan to incapacitate every member of the Justice League if the need ever arose. It seems safe enough in his hands, but the problem is it doesn't stay in his hands. I've given some spoilers here, so if you haven't read this and don't want to get spoiled, just fast forward a couple of minutes. But
well, they did do the Justice League Doom, which was a take on. Was it Doom, I believe, that did. So yes. It's kind of been spoiled already, just within the trailer for that. So I think you're safe.
Yeah. And it's been out for like 20 years. But basically, Ra's al Ghul gets a hold of all this information that Batman has, and he he decides to execute all the plans himself. And basically, as the rest of the League kind of struggles to understand how they're getting taken down so easily, Batman knows, like, secretly that this is all his fault. Like, these are his plans, you know?
This was in my diary.
This was in my bat diary.
Who knew to look under my pillow?
The bat pillows. And it's cool because they go through how each character is taken down. And it, like, at one point in the story, it goes back through and shows the confrontations that Batman had with all the other Justice League members, and shows you, like, how he thought up this stuff, like how it first, like, crossed his mind and stuff like that. Like, you know, Superman, his plan for taking down Superman was he had this synthetic red kryptonite that he manufactured, and it kind of turned his skin invisible or something, but it made him basically feel like his flesh was on fire, like he was burning all over his body, completely, like, incapacitated him or whatever.
That's much better than what the cartoon did, which was so generic. It's like the cartoon movie, which I had a huge issues with. So
yeah, actually, I forget what they did now. What did they do?
It was just a bullet, kryptonite bullet.
Yeah.
Which is like, you think someone else would come up with that idea. It's like, oh.
Well, they did on the Wolverine. They tried to shoot him with the adamantium bullet.
That was dumb. I hated that.
Horrible. But one of the cool ones too is the Green Lantern, which was the Kyle Rayner Green Lantern. Batman knew that the ring is based on willpower, and Kyle Rayner had such a creative mind. He was actually an artist too, but he's such a creative mind that he could come up with anything he wanted. And he basically knew that it was based on his sight and whatever he could, like, see. So Batman knows his fear, that he's, like, afraid to be blind. So he somehow would give him this hypnotic suggestion that makes him think he was blind. And then it's reinforced by his own willpower through the ring, so the ring actually makes him blind. So it's like a perfect way to, like, counteract his power of the ring. And then, like, Flash is some kind of, like, chip in the back of his neck that is vibrating at a certain frequency, and it makes him have, like, seizures at light speed or something. Aquaman was pretty cool. He would give him a modified version of Scarecrow's fear toxin and make him afraid of water. And since he was afraid of water and would be away from it, he would die within, hours or days or whatever. And you had Martian Manhunter's weakness is fire, and he had these nanites that would cover his skin. And when they were exposed with the oxygen in the air, they would ignite automatically and be like burning his skin. And there was like he would freeze Plastic Man with like liquid nitrogen, and Wonder Woman was another like hypnotic state where she has like basically a refusal to give up in battle. So if she would perceive that she's fighting someone who's her equal, technically she would fight them till she was exhausted and die from it. But it would be like this hypnosis that, she'd think she's fighting someone, but she's really not. So, like, all these things get executed, and Ra's al Ghul constructs a tower emitting a sonic frequency. It renders all written text unreadable to humans, hence the name Tower of Babel. But, obviously Batman knows how to undo the damage because he's, he came up with these plans, and it just sparks all these repercussions. Like, the other members of the team can't believe he would be that cold to scheme against his own teammates, and they end up taking a vote on his JLA membership, and the vote is tied when it comes down to Superman having the last vote. And they look in the meeting room, and Batman's already gone because he knows what the verdict's going to be. So, like, he kind of basically kicked off the team, and he spends some time away from the team. But awesome story. This really grew people's perception of just how prepared Batman really is, and like how maybe cold and maybe even heartless he is. Like, pretty crazy story.
Yeah, that's pretty nuts. I've not read that, but I've wanted to. And like I said, the Justice League movie sounds not nearly as interesting. The ways they came up with are similar for certain characters, but other ones they were a little bit more simplistic because they didn't have Kyle Rayner. They used Hal Jordan.
This is one actually that DC's usually pretty good at peeling it right off the page and put it in their animated movies, but this one, definitely the comic version is way better. Absolutely.
Nice. Greg, we'll bring it back to you. What's next on your list?
I'm going to go with one that I've been suggesting to Chuck for years now, I think it is. It's not that old. It's called Old Man Logan. It's got one of my favorite characters. If you haven't guessed it by the name Logan, it's got Wolverine. It came out in September 2009, and it's ran through Wolverine 66 through 72 and ended in Wolverine Giant Size Old Man Logan. Thank you, Wikipedia. The author is Mark Miller. The pencils were done by Steve McNiven.
I love his art.
McLovin.
And essentially, it's in the future. Logan has vowed never to pop his claws again because of some mysterious thing that we don't know about that happened in the past. The country's been taken over and split up into 5 different sections, and they are ruled over by 5 different villains, except the Abomination, who owns California. He owns the West Coast. Eventually gets taken over by the Hulk, and that's the area where Logan lives with his family. And so one day the Hulk's kids come over to get the rent money that Logan owes. And by the way, these kids, they're the kids of Hulk and She-Hulk. So a little bit of an incest relationship, hillbilliness going on, and that's really reflected in the kids. They look very hillbillyish. But so Wolverine has to come up with his money, and all of a sudden a blind Hawkeye shows up to get Wolverine to help him pull this job, and Wolverine thinks it's drugs that they're shipping across the nation through these 5 different lands. But essentially, Wolverine sets off across the U.S.
In the spider buggy, right?
The spider buggy, yep. The ridiculous spider buggy to go across the nation and deliver the goods to get money to pay off the Hulks. It's got awesome, crazy stuff, and the revelation at the end of what actually happened to make Wolverine not pop his claws is just, I thought was amazing, and I don't know why anybody hasn't thought of this before, but it has to do with an old Spider-Man villain that is actually one of my favorites, even though he's a little bit hokey. And then there's a final battle between Logan and actually there's 2 final battles, so you get that awesomeness of 2 final battles of Logan versus Bruce Banner and Logan versus the Red Skull, which is pretty freaking badass. And you get Hawkeye's daughter, who you think is trying to be a hero, but just wants to take over land from the Kingpin. Wolverine's going against some top baddies in this, and it's an extra kind of situation where it's kind of got the Age of Apocalypse feel to it. I thought it reminded me of that a little tiny bit, but I thought it was the same kind of epic quality that Age of Apocalypse has, but much easier and faster to read. There's a lot less of it. I hope they're coming out with more kind of stories from this time, but it's been a while since that came out, but I'm hoping for some more.
Yeah, I've read that. Honestly, though, I have not finished it, and it's been killing me for years. I've got to go back and finish it, but...
Oh, you need to finish it, Dan. The ending's so good.
I did enjoy everything I read. Like I said, I love the art of that.
Oh, yeah, it's good art.
And
that sounded so lame. It's good art, Dan. Good art.
But, yeah.
Very good.
Very good choice. Very good choice.
Yeah, definitely good choice on the art.
I'll tell you what, Greg, I'll make you a deal. I will check that out. if you check out a Superman story?
The one where he's in for the Russians.
You could choose that one if you want.
Okay.
I'll let you choose.
Fair.
Okay.
You heard it here first on the podcast, right? Yeah. It's been recorded. I think that's a fair trade. So.
Yeah, I do too. I'll read Superman Red Sun.
What am I going to read?
You have a whole list there, Dan.
Yeah. But next on my list, what's on my... I guess this was technically my number 5, but it doesn't really matter. But next on my list, I booed when you said DC, but that was only, in joking manner, because I actually do have a DC story on my list, and it's actually one I talked about on the podcast way back when, I think one of our first episodes. And it's Kingdom Come.
Nice.
And I read this story, and it's one of the few stories that's really stuck with me long after. First and foremost, Alex Ross's art is genius. That guy, I just love his photorealistic, the look of it. I love how it looks old school in a really cool way. No one really can do what he does. Like you're looking at Alex Ross's art right away. And I think his style even fits better with DC, though. I mean, Marvel's is a pretty good story as well, but just with that old-fashioned look, it fits well with Superman and those characters. And I am not the biggest Superman fan. I don't dislike him. I think there's a few good stories with that character, but this really made me look at him in a different way. And I think this is a really great commentary in general on comics, as well as the way we view heroes, especially during the time in the 90s. It gets into some really deep topics. It's too similar to like an alternate storyline, like in the future, but it's really cool. Some really great battle sequences, some interesting takes. It goes in directions you weren't expecting. But it's like a little bit of an older Superman, and with a really cool uniform, because it's just a slight adjustment to his ass with a little bit of a black background. But it's an iconic.
Did you say ass in there?
No.
I swear to God,
yes, his ass has a black background.
Has a black background.
Okay. Ignore me.
It's looked at as one of the greatest comic book stories ever, and I could not agree more. It's one of the best ones I've ever read. And if someone were to say to me, give me a comic book story that shows that comics are just as valuable as any type of literature, Kingdom Come is probably one of the ones I would give them, because it is actually written. It's really well done. And like I said, the story develops well and adds a little bit of commentary to comics, which you don't see very often. Anyways, Kingdom Come. Have you guys read Kingdom Come at all?
I have not. I do have that on my list of things to check out, though.
Nice.
Especially since you recommended it.
So his recommendations are more important, Chuck. That's what you're saying.
See, I knew you were going to go to that. But, not talking to you now. No, I'm just kidding. I had already been interested in that story and was wondering if it was good, bad, or ugly, or whatever.
I would definitely turn towards the good. And since you're probably the biggest Superman fan out of all of us, yeah, maybe even enjoy it more than I did. But so that's it for me. What is next on your list, Chuck?
Well, next up for me is yet another DC story. This probably is not going to be on a lot of people's lists, I'll be honest. Maybe a lot of people were sick of it or just don't consider it to be up there with the best, but it's one of my personal favorites, and that's the death of Superman. You might say, how could the death of my favorite character be like one of my favorites? But I don't know, just something about this story. It's a very well-known story, and actually one of the best-selling of all time, actually, too. And took place in that one of the reasons in the 90s that things got all crazy with the comic industry. But basically, Doomsday is accidentally uncovered deep underground by some crews that are working for Lex Luthor, and we find out that Doomsday's been buried there for like hundreds of years or something, and there was like this cryptic message that they decoded that said like, do not open or something like that. And he just he escapes and starts going on a rampage, killing everything in sight. He has no regard for life, and it's inevitable that he should meet up with Superman, because he kind of meets like the Justice League B team and he just tears through them like nothing. And they just make this guy so scary. And it's one of the few comics that can actually draw me into such a focused read. Like, the first time I read this, when I started reading about Doomsday's rampage, I just could not put it down. I had never really seen anything like that at the time. And Superman arrives to take a crack at him, and at that point it gets even more riveting. And the rest of the book is just the fight. It's like 2/3 of the book or 3/4 of the book or something is just the fight. It's incredible that you could make a fight sequence that long and make it interesting. And it's just page after page of extraordinary action panels. And it's one of the few times where, or maybe like the first time at that point in time, that you start to think, man, this guy seems like he could really stand toe-to-toe with Supes. You know, he's taking his punches easily, and he's going back at him even harder. Like, and one of the cool things too is, like, you know, this is probably what a Superman Hulk fight would be like. It's probably the closest thing that we would get. And then the big moment where, you know, they're both exhausted from the battle and they just clash with everything that they have left, and they both die. And it's just this insane moment, even though you know it's coming. Just that Superman gives this ultimate sacrifice to save everyone, because he knows if he doesn't stop this guy, there's no one else that can. He's just so dangerous. And of course, nobody stays dead in comics, so it doesn't really last that long for either of them. But if you look at it as an isolated story, I think it's really incredible. It's just one of my favorites. I really enjoy reading that one.
Yeah, again, one I haven't read. I have watched the DC animated movie. I remember that was like the first one that they released way back when.
I don't think that quite does it justice, though. I think the actual comic is better, too.
Yeah. And like you said, that I remember hearing about Superman dying, like, on the news. That was, like, a huge, gigantic issue. Like you said, probably one of the best-selling comics of all time. And I remember even, like, Saturday Night Live did a skit of, like, Superman dying, and, like, Chris Farley played the Hulk and stuff. Like, it was but yeah, that was the peak of comics becoming popular, really. I don't think they've really even hit that yet.
Yeah, I think actually, Greg, you might like this one too, because
Superman dies.
Yeah,
I was gonna say that's a Superman story everybody can enjoy.
But it shows he can be killed, basically. Like, it's, you know, someone can go toe to toe with him, and Doomsday is just badass, man. I mean, he is scary. He is one scary villain.
I think I actually read this. This is one of the very few Superman stories that I actually have read.
I have Doomsday. Like, I'm also a little bit like Dan. I have some like lists, like random lists that I make. But Doomsday is probably in my top 5 favorite villains, just because I think he's that cool. And they did some stories later on after that where they explained Doomsday's origin and how he was created by scientists on Krypton through thousands of iterations of killing him and then evolving his cells and stuff and regrowing him, so that, like, you know, each time they did that, he could never die the same way again. So it just made him, like, insanely strong.
Before reading this, I actually had an idea for a character like that.
Oh, wow, that's impressive.
Yeah. No one's going to actually believe me on that, but I swear to God that happened.
I'm doing the old, shovel in the ground motion right now. Getting pretty deep.
Yeah, I mean, I had an idea for a character who came from a separate planet and that was dying and became a hero, but that was taken, so...
Wow, you're really old. You came up with that before the
exactly.
But yeah, one other thing about that story was they showed this kind of, I guess, intimate moment with, like, Lex Luthor, and he's, like, legitimately pissed off that Superman's dead. And it's not because, like, he misses him or whatever and, you know, wants to go camping with him or something, but he wanted to be the one to kill him. He wanted to be the one to embarrass him, and, you know, that chance is gone because he's killed. And it's just this really cool moment with Lex that he's, like, flipping out, and I thought that was a really cool touch to it too.
I never got to tell you I love you, Superman.
A tear comes from down his cheek. It's just lip quiver.
Can't see Jesse Eisenberg doing that. I don't know.
You complete me, Superman. All right, Greg, on back to you. What's next on your list?
Well, I think I'll go with a book where you've where you have mentioned the artist of it. I don't think we really need to say anything more because Alex Ross's art is amazing, but I'm going over the other publisher with him with Marvel Comics with their book called Marvels. And I just thought it's a great look at some of the biggest moments in Marvel history through a man's eyes where you can actually relate to the person because it's a normal, average person. It's a photojournalist going around, and he just so happens, he's a lucky-ass photographer that just happens to upon some of the biggest moments in Marvel's history. You've got the original Human Torch. You've got Atlantis attacking New York. You've got the X-Men saving a little mutant girl. Oh, what else is in there?
Galactus.
Got Galactus. And you kind of go through this whole man's career from when he's just starting off. You go through him with his family issues, and then all of a sudden, oh, look at over there, Galactus is attacking, snap, snap, snap. It's so down to earth, and it feels so real with Alex Ross's art. If you're a fan of Marvel and you haven't checked out this book, I really recommend getting on it. It's very intimate. It's very well done. It's not just a comic book. It's a piece of literature, and it's a great history of the Marvel Universe. Like, if you want to get into Marvel Comics, if you want to start reading comics, I think this would be a really good one because you get a little bit of hint of what you're in for.
Yeah, definitely. It kind of like heroifies things, I think, in a way that nothing else really could, just because it puts it in a perspective that you don't get in a comic book because you're just so used to seeing it through the hero's eye. So, and I know Marvel tried to do similar things with like their front page comics in Civil War and Secret Avengers. Not Secret Avengers, but
those didn't come anywhere close to this book, if you ask me.
No, I do really like those, but yeah, it's not nearly as effective as Marvel's because there's more of a stoicness to Marvel than Marvel's than that. It's it's like an old timiness. It's like a Ken Burns documentary about Marvel, I guess.
That's a good explanation too.
Yeah, the art is absolutely jaw-dropping in that too, in Marvel's.
Yeah, agree. Anything if Alex Ross puts his name on something, or if he's doing art for something, you know the story's there because I think he is a guy with as much time as it takes him to come up with what he does. I don't think he does not do art for a story or for a comic without knowing that there's something there for him to really get into. So I've not read everything he's done. Like I've not read Beyond or stuff like that, but I hope to one day. So I guess I will go on to mine next, and again, not a Marvel story, but one people are very, very familiar with because it is the inspiration for the biggest show on television right now, and that is The Walking Dead. I don't know if you guys have read The Walking Dead at all. I know you watch it. Have you read it at all?
No, I haven't read it at all, actually.
I haven't read it. I wanted to get into the graphic novels, but I the way they have them, I don't know exactly where I'm supposed to start with those.
Yeah, I mean, I do have the first few volumes I should let you borrow to add to your list. But I got into it like right before the show started. It was already rather popular, and it's hard to use. Most of these we're trying to pick specific stories. With The Walking Dead, it's a little bit more difficult. I'm not completely caught up at this point. I'm about at 75% of the way through it at this point, and but I've liked it a great deal. I think the first season covers the first graphic novel for the most part, but I think where it really hits its stride, where it really starts getting good, is once it gets into the prison, gets into that story, it adds in some characters like Michonne. It really develops those relationships when it has a rivalry with the governor. And there are a lot of similarities with the show and the book. But I think the one thing the comic book does a lot better is build its characters and develop them more in the relationships. And it got a lot of characters right that the show never really did. Like, I'm thinking of Andrea specifically. her in the show, it never really worked, but she was one of the best characters in the comic. She was like one of the most important characters, and I think currently, as I'm reading, she still is. Not to spoil anything, but even if you watch the show, you can still read the comic because it diverges so much that it doesn't really ruin it at all. There are certain characters that die in the comic that are still alive, and vice versa. So, but I think what it does, it takes the idea of the zombie story, a story that's been done, since Night of the Living Dead. We've seen tons of it. But I think what separates The Walking Dead, though, is its characters more so than anything. It makes really cool, normal human beings and develops them in interesting ways, and you really see the effect of what a zombie apocalypse would be like on a person in the long term, which is something we've really never seen before, and seeing how it would affect the way you act, the way children would act, the way they would dissect and deal with a world like that. So it gets into some really cool stuff, goes in some really interesting directions, and it's also not afraid to kill characters and bring in new characters. So I'm really looking forward to the next season, because there are certain characters that debuted near the end of season 4 are some of my favorites so far. So looking forward to see what they're liking in the show. So The Walking Dead is I guess technically my number 4, but right now 3. So, all right, Chuck, what's your number 3?
Okay, my number 3. I'm getting into my Marvel stuff now. My top 3 are all Marvel. I'm a big 2 guy, even though I have read a little bit of Star Wars and Transformers graphic novels and stuff like that, but I'm primarily a big 2 guy.
You really like the
I really like doing number 2 in a bucket. This story is hard to name. I guess it kind of has a name, and that is X-Men Mutant Genesis.
All right.
Which is basically the 1991 relaunch of the X-Men done by Chris Claremont and Jim Lee. This story to me is iconic in all caps, in my opinion. This basically set the tone for the entire 90s. Jim Lee's artwork, his classic, his redesign of the costumes. You got Claremont, who's known for some great X-Men stuff. And basically, I have individual issues, but I also have the graphic novel. The graphic novel is titled Mutant Genesis. It has issues 1 through 7, but I'm looking primarily at the first 3. And basically, it picks up a day in the life of the X-Men, just training in the Danger Room. And it's such a cool sequence where, they kind of introduce the idea of the blue team and the gold team. I think that's really cool, too. And they have, they break the X-Men down into different strike teams, and actually they try to get through the mansion's defenses and basically get to Xavier. And you have the classic where Wolverine comes up through the floor and has the claws right in Xavier's face, and he's like, "Bang, Charlie, you're dead." And Cyclops is like, "Careful waving those things around," But
stop being a douchebag, Cyclops.
Cyclops is your mom.
But I think it's such a cool story, because it introduces kind of a different take on the X-Men, but it's not that different. It still has what the X-Men are about, but basically, Magneto has Asteroid M orbiting the Earth, and he's offering sanctuary to any mutant that wants to come. His acolytes travel there, and they start doing these crazy things kind of in his name, for the sake of Magneto's cause. Stuff that Magneto's not really telling them to do, maybe not necessarily in agreement, but he agrees to back them and protect them because they're his followers or whatever. And things get pretty heated with the leaders of Russia and the United States and stuff like that. The X-Men travel to the asteroid to confront him. Magneto actually recruits, kind of brainwashes some of the members from the X-Men away from Xavier, and this huge battle ensues between the two sides. And it's just incredible. Like, I love Jim Lee's artwork to begin with, and a lot of people do. But, like, you team him up with Claremont, and it's just like a, automatic home run, in my opinion. But I actually wanted to read a little quote at the end of issue 3. It's like how issue 3 ends. That's right, we're going to have Chuck's little story time here. So, gather around, sit Indian style.
Nope, they can't say Indian style anymore, Chuck. That's apparently not cool in schools anymore.
Yeah. It's I know some people call it crisscross applesauce, but
I'm offended by applesauce. Cross-legged, however you want to say it, but
be on your knees is what we're saying.
Yeah,
that sounds wrong. It's even worse.
It's not going to be long, but basically this sums up who the X-Men are, but really who Magneto is, why he's such a cool villain. So it starts off at the end where there's this huge explosion where the asteroid blows up by this bomb, and seemingly Magneto has died too. And Xavier says, at the very last moment, like, he opened his thoughts to me. And you hear Magneto's quote, and it says, "I save you, X-Men," he said, "because that is my task in life, to safeguard my people, Homo sapiens superior, mutant kind, from those who would do us harm. I have survived one Holocaust. I could not tolerate another, nor any who, by accident, by intent, act to bring it about. I bore no animus to you, old friend, or your students, until you chose to oppose me. Then I had no choice but to count you among my enemies. Have no illusions on that score. Perhaps it's best it end this way, Charles, best for my dream to end in flames and glory, here far above the earth. For if we were ever to meet again, I would have shown you no mercy. I give you your dream, Charles, but I fear in time your heart will break, as you realize it has ever been a fool's hope. Farewell, my friend." I just think that's like the epitome of the X-Men and their struggle with Magneto. I just think that's so cool, the way they end that. And, of course, like normal, people don't stay dead in the comics, and things come out later, but that story, like, set the tone for the X-Men in the 90s, and a lot of cool stuff came about because of that. And I just like the way it kicked things off, and I've always been basically in love with that story. Really cool.
Very nice. Yeah, I mean, as lovers of the X-Men cartoon from the 90s, that is a direct representation of that, that run. I mean, people look at it as a blue and gold era as kind of the high point of the X-Men. So, yeah,
and that really inspired that cartoon as well, the way they drew it and the stories they took from it and stuff like that.
Very nice. So, Greg, back to you. What is your number 2? Or I guess you don't number yours because you're too good for that, but whatever.
I'm just not a lister like you are, Dan. Now that you guys are starting to talk about Marvel stuff, I'm going to start getting away from Marvel stuff. I, weirdly enough, don't have any DC stuff for my final 2 here. It probably would have been Batman, if anything, but I was having problems remembering any Batman stories that was really sticking out to me. But I'm going to go with something that we've kind of talked a little bit about tonight in passing. The 2 movies kind of got me started reading these comics, and reading the comics just kind of extended more of my enjoyment of the movies even, and that would be Hellboy. And I'm going to base it off the first volume of the graphic novels of Seeds of Destruction, where it's essentially the movie, but some of the things have been changed. It's basically the first Hellboy movie, but some elements are a little bit different, and then there's a little bit more added on. It's a little bit more of an extended story. There's more people involved in the portal opening. It's still Rasputin doing it. I don't think they ever really say Rasputin's name through the whole thing. They just kind of reference it, that he was from Russia and he's working for Germany, one of his home country's mortal foes, and that he's been shot, stabbed, drowned, and whatnot. But he still lives and everything. Mike Mignola is the creator of all this, and he draws. His drawings in this are so amazing. Back in the day, though, when I first saw Hellboy stuff, I was like, what's that? What's up with the weird monkey dude with goggles on his head? But as I grew, I kind of started to love and enjoy Mike Mignola's artwork. It's kind of got this, I guess you would say, a gothic quality to it. It's very simple. It's just so incredible. The composition of every panel and like the detail that goes into it is kind of incredible. And the colors, it's really dark. It's a very basic color pattern with the blacks, reds, and then very natural colors like your browns and greens and stuff like that. And the story, it's got all these great, weird, mythological stories, like some of them that you've never heard of before. And it gets very H.P. Lovecraftian to them and everything. And but for the Seeds of Destruction, you've got basic changes from the movie. Liz Sherman and Hellboy aren't really a couple or anything. You don't have John Myers in the comics. Instead of Samael, you've got frog monsters. You've got Professor Broom dying not by the hands of Rupert Cronin. You don't have him dying by Rupert's hand. His death kind of sets off this whole adventure and Hellboy going off. And then you get into kind of what Professor Broom has been up to in the past couple of years, going on an expedition. And that expedition kind of has to do with the end of the story and everything. I don't want to give that away for anybody, even though the ending of this story is a little bit different than Del Toro's ending. But it's really good book. I highly recommend it to anybody. I'm still going through Hellboy. I think I have all of them collected. I can't find issue number 10 of the graphic novel in good condition, though. And I've started kind of offshooting into Abe Sapien has his own series, so I'm starting to collect those. BPRD, I want to read all those. And then I also want to get to Hellboy in Hell. But a lot of great stories. Mike Mignola has kind of went off and not done the art and just kind of doing stories for a little bit. But I think he's been starting to get back into the art a little bit. So I'm so glad that he's starting to get into the art some more. But Hellboy, Seeds of Destruction, definitely go check it out. It's definitely one of my favorites.
Very nice. Who is Dark Horse? They're the ones behind Hellboy?
Yes, they are.
Nice. Yeah, I've not read any Hellboy, but I probably should get on that. The books, they're like not the normal size for graphic novels, right? Are they like a different size?
The ones I have, and I don't think they really come in hardcover, but these are soft cover. And I think they're around the average size of a graphic novel. It's towards the smaller size. It's not like you're getting a Age of Apocalypse graphic novel.
I could be thinking. I would be thinking of something else. I don't know. It's not that important.
Yeah, these are about $18. I think it's well worth it for $18. And it's not a whole ton of reading because Hellboy is kind of a blue-collar kind of gruff guy who just kind of says enough to get his point across, and that's it. And I think there's a lot of interesting folk tales that you could kind of like read a story going through and be like, well, this is interesting, and then you kind of go back and read the original materials and stuff.
Very nice, very nice. All right, on to my next story. And yeah, I am kind of getting into Marvel now. I had one Marvel on my list so far with Age of Apocalypse. And spoiler alert, the rest will be Marvel on my list now as well. My next story, though, it's a Neil Gaiman story. And I know a lot of people love Neil Gaiman. I think even someone in our comment mentioned Sandman and a lot of stories you could choose from. One of my personal favorites is 1602. I don't know if you guys have heard of this or read this story at all.
I've read some of them.
I really love.
No, I never read that.
the premise behind 1602, as I'm looking at my list now, I realize so much of this is alternate timelines, but what are you going to...
Way to be, Dan. Way to be.
Premise of 1602 is it takes place during 1602 in the Marvel Universe. So you have characters like Daredevil, characters like the X-Men that are placed into, that time period, as if like they were to happen then, and like Middle Ages, and it's like Game of Thrones meets the Marvel, but they come up with the characters in so clever ways, and I'm a fan of history, so seeing that kind of adjustment is rather interesting, and where it goes you're not really expecting. There are 2 1602 books. They did like a continuation of it too, similar with X-Men, Age of Apocalypse, and those aren't nearly as good. But like Neil Gaiman has such an imagination for creating these characters and having them done in interesting ways. Like one of my personal favorites was like take on Daredevil, and what he was like. The X-Men are kind of interesting too, just to see like how he fits them in. It's a little bit steampunkish, but not quite. Like you do think like, well, this just kind of happened. I could see where he's coming from. But I would highly, highly recommend it if you're a fan of Neil Gaiman stuff, or like I mentioned, like alternate timelines. You don't see a lot of comic books that take place during that time, so it does let it stand out, because it's seeing like Marvel characters speak in like Old English was rather interesting, and this is during the Age of Exploration and gets into kind of some of that stuff, and it's like explaining certain historical elements with using Marvel characters, so that was kind of fun too. And like even it has kind of like a sinister thing going on in the background that you may not be aware of, but I'm a big fan of that comic. And when I read it, I didn't realize comics could do stuff like that. I didn't realize comics could go into those different patterns and really completely revamp everything. So, and I love stories that are self-contained like that. We don't have to worry about anything else except for the story that you're reading, which is nice, because
it's very relaxing when you get stories like that every once in a while now.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about 75 years of continuity as you try to figure out what's going on. So that's my number 2, or I guess 3, I don't even know. But Chuck, back over to you. What is next on your list?
Well, next up for me is a very popular story. It's more of a recent story, and that's Civil War.
Nice.
This is one of the ones on mine that I thought may have some crossover, but it doesn't look like it has so far.
It's an honorable mention for me for sure.
Yeah. Great comic. Mark Millar, some more Stephen McNiven art. I do enjoy the art in this a lot. I even like some of the alternate covers by Michael Turner, because I used to love Michael Turner stuff.
R.I.P.
Yeah, he definitely left too soon. That guy was very talented. This was a kind of like a trailblazer, this story. Like, I'd never really seen anything like this before. Like, Marvel just taking all of its heroes, splitting them down the middle with a controversial issue, and then just having them go at it. You basically have an event that happens in, I think it's Stamford, Connecticut, which I saw the sign for that when I drove through Connecticut. So I was like, oh, that's where the Civil War started.
Like, no, not that Civil War.
Not never mind. It's not the real one. And I find it hilarious, too, that the guy that started this all, like Nitro, when he exploded and killed these kids at this school, this character Nitro, if you look up his bio on like Marvel.com, he was from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Somebody from our area just effed up this whole thing and sparked this entire Civil War. Just, I remember, like, I had been into comics for a little while before this came out, but this was one of the newer ones that I really got into. There was a lot of stuff they were putting out that I wasn't too crazy about, but this was spectacular. And yet, basically in the wake of the event, you have people calling for superheroes to be registered with the government. Basically like a police officer or FBI agent, something like that. They should be registered. They should have ID. They should have training. so that, accidents like this don't happen with like how the New Warriors just kind of haphazardly attempted to apprehend Nitro and something tragic happened. And so you have a lot of people calling for that, and it eventually passes into law, the Superhero Registration Act. And of course, Iron Man at this time, he's like getting to be one of the higher ups and involved in a lot of government practices and SHIELD and stuff like that. So he's all for it. And you have Captain America, who thinks that it's totally unethical and it goes against the Constitution, goes against people's rights and stuff like that.
Doesn't he say like it's like a kind of Nazism kind of going on with it too?
Yeah, like something like that. They're trying to kind of force stuff like that. They have to reveal their secret identities when they sign up and register and all that stuff. So you have two figureheads of Marvel, like Captain America and Iron Man, and it's like those are the two sides. And I remember all the promotions back then, like the little cards you would get, like whose side are you on, and it would give you lists, like updated lists every week, like who's on what side, and it would list like, okay, here's all the heroes on Cap's side, and here's all the heroes on Iron Man's side, and there was just a lot of promotion going on, like whose side you on, and there's stuff on the internet and all these websites, and I really got into all that stuff. It was really cool.
Cap had all the cool characters on his side, like Iron Man had like Mr. Fantastic. He was like, yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
Pym. Yeah, he had all the nerdy kids.
Yeah, and then of course you had like kind of the subplot going on with like, Spider-Man, who is also one of my favorite characters, and he's, wanting to do the right thing. He has a talk with Tony Stark, wants to do the right thing, so he joins his side, kind of reveals his identity to the world. J. Jonah Jameson almost has a heart attack. And then, after a while, kind of realizing the error of his ways, and decides to switch and go over to Captain America's side, and that was a cool little, offshoot that they had in this story, little subplot going on.
That's the point in time where Spider-Man kept showing his face to everybody that would look at him.
Yeah, I know. There was no secret anymore.
Oh, yeah, in the movie, he was revealing his face to everybody.
Yeah, everybody on the train. It's like, don't worry, we won't tell anybody.
That pissed me off too.
This is going on Facebook right now.
Selfie.
Spider-Man's a whiny kid from New York. But yeah, I know. I'm pretty sure that Civil War is one of the favorites for you guys. I figured it would at least be an honorable mention, and I know that's a lot of people's favorite. It was really a pioneering type of story for its day.
Yeah, I mean, that's when I was at the height of my comic collecting during that time. I kind of got into it a little bit, and I'll talk about that in a little bit in just a while. But I love Civil War, and I love just the idea behind it. Like you mentioned, the concept. I got nearly every issue I could. I was suckered into it. All the side stories, and some of my favorite ones were some of the smaller ones, like War Crimes. I remember that was regarding some of the more subplots behind Civil War and things like that. That was a really great issue. There was just so much going on. I know the X-Men kind of sat it out for the most part, but they did have a little bit of story there. Theirs was probably one of the weaker ones, but
they're like, we're not getting involved.
Yeah. the one that really stood out. I mean, one thing I really liked too was you talked about Spider-Man. I love the Iron Spider costume.
Oh yeah, that's sweet,
awesome.
That was really cool. I was sad to see that go. So.
Yeah, definitely. That is one thing that I missed from that. But I know you mentioned a little while ago about the frontline stories. They were pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I think if you're looking to collect Civil War or collect graphic novels or something like that, you got the main one, and then I think maybe there's a lot of ones that weren't really necessary. But I think the ones that were necessary were the Captain America issues, the Iron Man ones, and then probably the Spider-Man ones.
Yeah.
And then, other than that, they kind of weren't really necessary to the story.
I really fell in love, though. I was reading the Wolverine during that Civil War, and that was when Humberto Ramos was doing Wolverine, and I really fell in love with his illustration of Wolverine. I mentioned it before. I have an awesome Humberto Ramos Civil War Wolverine up on my wall.
Yeah. And that stuff probably led to him being on the New Avengers, right? Like after the Civil War and all that stuff.
No, that was before.
He was on it.
Yeah.
During the Civil War.
Yeah, Civil War happened.
Oh, okay.
Happened after beginning of the New Avengers. So.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. All right, Greg. I guess this is the enchilada, but I guess what is last on your list?
I was having trouble with my list. I didn't know what the fifth comic should be on my list.
The Fifth Element.
I love that movie. I've been kind of going back and forth in my head between two of my new favorites, and those are Saga and Fable.
Put them together. It's fine. You can cheat.
Well, Saga, I'll just go over real quick. It's space adventure, kind of new Romeo and Juliet. There's a war going on between their two cultures, that one's on the main planet, the other's on the moon, and you've got family issues to deal with, along with they just had a kid and they're just trying to escape both sides, and they've got bounty hunters sent after them. So it's like a really updated, more modern Star Wars. It's not for kids at all. There's weird shit going on, like a spider lady with her boobs popped out and no arms, but she's got the spider body going on. Sexual acts going on in the background. There's a giant with his giant balls hanging out. So far, it's all been one big story. And then Fables, there's kind of multiple stories going on, and if I was going to pick one of those, I'd say the first graphic novel, which really got me into it, deals with the all your favorite characters from Fables back in the day. You could have like Pinocchio, you could have Blue, you have Cinderella, you've got the Big Bad Wolf. And they've all got kind of run out of their homelands, the Fable lands, by this mysterious overtaker and his armies. And so they kind of have to run into the Mundy world, the normal world. So it's kind of a little backwards Harry Potter-esque going on there. And I think they started Fables before Harry Potter. And this first book kind of deals with a little bit of a murder mystery, and the Big Bad Wolf is the detective, and he's the police force, essentially, for the tower that holds the Fables in New York City. And he's trying to find out what happened, who killed Rose Red, who is kind of a very not well-known fable from German lore. And so he kind of goes off, and I just thought the ending was really great. And then there's a whole bunch of different little subplots going on in the background. I don't really care for the illustrations that much in it. I so far, all the art in it has just been kind of ho-hum for me. But you do get really awesome covers by James Jean, however you say his last name. It's Jean. But he's got some great cover work going on, and this story, I think, more than makes up for the art. So check out those two that count as my fifth, I guess, or wherever that is on my list of non-lists.
Very nice. Yeah, I've heard so much about both of those, but I've of course not read either of them because that's my trend. That's what I do. That is how I roll. But I guess it's next to me what's last on my list. And though this isn't technically my number one, I guess in some ways it could be, honestly. Like my number one was Age of Apocalypse, but this one is right up there. And largely because it's the story that got me back into comics. And I talked about this, the comic book store we used to go to called Night Owl. And I'm picked this first issue up and I got into it and I kept going back for more and more. And I just loved it because it completely made me rethink the way I look at a character. And that character is Captain America. And the story is one that you're very familiar with because the movie just came out not too long ago. And that is The Winter Soldier. It is a story that took Captain America into a new direction. It revamped Bucky. It made Bucky into a badass. It really adjusted the way people looked at him because people always kind of made him into more of a joke, really. But it revamped his history, I guess, retconned, if you will. It used Captain America's history in an effective way to show that, he's still haunted, and it led up to, the Winter Soldier. And I love really where it went. Like when, spoiler alert, Captain America gets killed, but obviously he's back alive.
What?
I know. Because when you said Civil War, and I guess this storyline very much ties into Civil War, when he got killed, I was very angry because I was loving this comic. I'm like, oh, this was going in such a great direction. And I was so angry when they killed Cap. I remember being so mad that they would do that. But I ended up really thinking it was a bold choice and working really well because of how they handled it. Like the Fallen Sun storylines, comics, which I thought were really good, which really showed just how important of a character was. And it also led into Bucky becoming Cap and how well that worked. And how it further developed that character, and it made Bucky into like a hero that he was not yet ready to be. I'm a big sucker for cool costumes, and I love the new costume. I just love how he had a gun, and the reason he had a gun was because he knew he wasn't as good as Steve, so he had to have a backup. But he also used the gun in interesting ways, and it was a huge controversy at the time that Captain America now has a gun. I remember when that was a big thing, and people are freaking out about it. But
yeah, that's because they didn't know what actually happened. They thought it was the original Steve Rogers had a gun, but it's not. It's Bucky.
Yeah, but
even though Steve fought in World War II and everyone had used guns.
Yeah. But anyways, the first issue where he becomes Cap, it's one of my favorite issues of comics ever because it kind of asks all the questions that we were asking, and it answers them in very cool ways. And I remember it's the first time he throws the shield, and it looks like he messes up, and then how they really deal with that was really clever. That to me is when it gets really good. When it kind of dips is when they bring Cap back, and I think it gets a little bit muddled, and I kind of wish in some ways that they just didn't do that. Up to that point, to me, it was just excellent. Like I said, I just loved, and I love the art too. The art stayed so consistent throughout. Even when they got a new artist, they would still go with that similar style. And also have some of my favorite covers, just with there's always so much going on. They look like old classic movie posters in some ways with all the different scenes. But yeah, I was just amazed by it. And this is a comic, like I said, that really got me back into comics. And then it was a snowball effect that just kept growing. And then when Civil War hit, it was just the peak of it all. So, all right.
I like what you said there about the covers kind of looking like the old time movie posters. I totally agree with that. And I think almost to a degree, like when the Captain America First Avenger movie came out, they were kind of doing some posters like modeled after that example. They were, kind of having like characters in different scenes like put onto these posters, and it reminded me a lot of those covers from that. They took a lot of inspiration from that.
Yeah, like the cover would tell you the story of the comic, but without giving anything away. It was similar to like some of the James Bond title sequences and how they would do that. So I just love that story. I mean, I've gone back and reread it a few times, and that story, along with like just Captain America Man at a Time, if you're gonna read Cap, go to those. And another one that I'll mention when we get into honorable mentions, but I guess Chuck, it's your moment of truth. I think I have an idea of what's on your list, but I could be wrong. So what's number one on your list?
It's probably not too hard to figure out if you've been listening to like the last five episodes. It's kind of come up here and there quite a bit, but my number one is Infinity Gauntlet. Pretty predictable, I guess, but I guess it doesn't get a lot of consideration as a great story. I mean, that doesn't really bother me. It's my probably favorite, or there's a lot of others that are close, but I've always like felt like somehow I don't know if I connected. It's an outer space story. You can't really connect with that, but something about this story that just intrigued me. And it's not just the 6 individual issues of the Infinity Gauntlet. You have to include the 2 issues called Thanos Quest beforehand, where he acquires all the gems to make the gauntlet. Those are a huge part of the story, and you can't leave those out. Really, really cool how he comes up with the strategy to take the gems away from the Elders of the Universe, basically like outsmarts them. It's unbelievably clever. And then he finally assembles the gauntlet and just wants to like please death, he's infatuated with the female embodiment of death, and he thinks it's his duty to like do enough to live up to her expectations and stuff like that. But basically, like you have the Marvel heroes kind of assembling really like nothing we've seen since like Secret Wars, basically. And it's even more so because it's just like every like hero and character you could possibly imagine. And like Marvel throws the heroes at him, Cap's the leader. He's like the master strategist, and Thanos just like mows them down. Like I talked about when we were doing the badass bracket, there was this really cool moment where they had Wolverine kind of sneak up behind Thanos and leap off this rock and just plunge all of his claws right into Thanos' chest. But, I mean, he's got the Infinity Gauntlet that's not going to do anything to him. And they have, like, Cap going to fight him in hand-to-hand combat. And you have Thanos just breaking Captain America's shield, which everyone thought was unbreakable. And Thanos just, like, backhands it and shatters the shield. And you have him, I remember him beating some other characters by just creating like a cube or a sphere or something around their head with no air in it and just suffocating them and stuff. Like he could just do anything that he wanted. It was anything to his whim that he could do with this gauntlet. And then you had like the heavy hitters, like the cosmic characters come in, like Galactus and Chaos and Order and Eternity and some of these other like crazy cosmic entities, and they try to take him out and they don't even have the power to like take him down. And there's like the struggle with his like granddaughter Nebula, who is like kind of in his corner. She's on Thanos' side, but he never expects her to like take the gauntlet off of him, I guess. And she's not capable like mentally of handling this power, so she doesn't last long with it, and it kind of there's this huge scramble, and Adam Warlock is the one that ends up with it, and it leads into the next story, which is Infinity War, which I do like also a lot, but not as much as this original Infinity Gauntlet. But I just loved how it was like every hero ever just assembling to take down this one guy, and they really couldn't do it like toe to toe. It was kind of a roundabout way that they were able to defeat him, but just always been probably my favorite story.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the badass bracket. We went into a lot, but you talked a lot about the Infinity Gauntlet, and it is an iconic story for sure. And Marvel's kind of leading to that, obviously, and there's a reason. So,
yeah, they're kind of modeling their cinematic universe after it, and they're striving towards that goal, it would seem.
Yeah. Only thing we wish is that we could get all those characters that are owned by all those other studios actually into it to make it really, really like the comic. But you can only dream.
That would be sweet. Fantastic Four and X-Men and all that stuff. Spider-Man. But one really iconic part of this too that I wanted to bring up was and it was a part that Greg was able to bring in a very cool way with his graphic design skills when he made the badass bracket. He had a picture of Thanos that was right from the comic, and it's just him with the gauntlet, and he's just standing there, and it's just this quote, these 4 simple words. I think it was actually a cover of one of the issues, and it just said, "Come and get me." Yeah, and it just said, "Come and get me." And it was basically just this brazen challenge to the entire Marvel universe, like, I know you can't stop me, but just come and try for the fun of it, because I'm going to have a blast defeating you people.
That's why I put it on put him on there like that. I thought you would appreciate that, and I thought the nerdiest of us would appreciate that.
Yeah, very cool. Nice touch.
I guess before we get to the letter for today, any honorable mentions, anything that almost made your list but didn't quite do it?
Yeah, I had a lot of honorable mentions, a lot that were tough to weed out, as I'm sure you guys had the same trouble. I guess like stuff like Days of Future Past, stuff like that. And an interesting thing about that, I felt that if they did Days of Future Past in like the late 90s or 2000s, it would have been like, you know, a 12-issue crossover event and like all these tie-ins. But, you know, when they did it in 1980, it was 2 issues. So, you know, that kind of says something for how comics changed over those 10 or 20 years. But that's a great story that, you know, the movie's coming out in a couple weeks. I'm super stoked for that. Also stuff like the Wolverine Weapon X story, just how they explain how Wolverine became who he is, became Wolverine. He got the adamantium skeleton and all that stuff. That's an awesome story. Pretty cool artwork in that as well. You know, stuff like Secret Wars, Secret War even. Nick Fury's little Secret War there that he had a few choice Marvel heroes.
Yeah, which very much led into Civil War.
Yeah, definitely. Some shady goings on there that kind of triggered some stuff. And then I guess a couple of DC ones. I do really like the Red Sun, Superman Red Sun, as we talked about. I like the Superman Batman series. One of the ones I like in particular was Supergirl. And they made a animated movie out of that, which was called Apocalypse. That's a really cool story. And then also, we talked a lot about Alex Ross in this episode. He did a story for DC called Justice. And that was a really, really cool story. I think it was maybe the Injustice League. Basically taking down every member of the Justice League, devising these master plans to take out each one of them, and they succeed. And it's done really, really well. Really cool story. And Alex Ross's artwork is, you know, terrific as usual. So that one I enjoy a great deal as well. And there's a lot of them that I haven't gotten to yet that I'm dying to. I literally just got the Captain America Winter Soldier one. I'm going to be checking that out soon. Man Out of Time. What else we got? Some of the Spider-Man 90s stuff I love. Like the stuff with Venom and Maximum Carnage. Some Avengers stories. Just tons of stuff. It was really, really hard to narrow this down to 5. Like I said, if I do it next week, it'd probably be totally different.
Yeah. Some of mine, I liked Matt Fraction's run on Invincible Iron Man when that came out. That started like shortly after the first Iron Man movie. Executioner's Song, which was like a multi-part story in the 90s, centering around Cable and Strife, and about one of the first times, you know, Xavier's attempted to be assassinated. You know, they like to do that to him. A couple of Captain America stories, like you mentioned, Man Out of Time, I really enjoyed. Also, Captain America: A New Deal, mostly because it has one of my all-time like favorite single issues, which is Captain America: Dust, which takes place like right after September 11th, and the entire issue is like gray. It just has this because it's about you know, the towers falling and how you had that gray ash falling, and nearly the entire thing is like in the gray tone to it. And the only thing that really has color is Captain America's uniform. So I really, really like that issue in that run. Also, the revamp of Thor that came out in the mid 2000s, shortly after the Civil War, with him going into New Mexico, and I love that run. I think that really redefined the character of Thor. Bullet Points, I really like that story, which is like similar to an alternate storyline about like what happens if all different issues, just kind of seeing like how one small thing can completely change everything. But yeah, there's a lot I can go on for a while, for sure. For I guess Batman Killer Joke I enjoyed. So, and Red Sun, like you mentioned, is a great one as well. So
yeah, and one that I forgot that I just want to mention real quick, I think something that you guys would enjoy a lot too, and you probably read it at some point, but it was a crossover between the Avengers and X-Men called Blood Ties.
Yes, I did read that.
Yeah, I've only read parts.
That's very cool, I think, because it's a whole other, it's a classic struggle between the X-Men and that whole minorities being oppressed and in Genosha and stuff like that, and they kidnap Quicksilver and Crystal's daughter, and they face off with Exodus and Fabian Cortez and stuff like that. That's a really cool story, actually.
Yeah, I should also mention Planet Hulk. I really dig, and New Avengers, when that first for a while, honestly, like that run, I really like New Avengers. That, again, was about the time I was getting back into comics. So, Greg, what about you? What are any comics that you didn't mention?
Well, you got some Batman stuff, like the Batman and Robin, where Dick Grayson took over as Batman, and the roles kind of got reversed, where Robin was kind of cold-hearted and just wanted to get out there and fight, and Batman's a little bit more happy and chipper. I thought that was kind of a neat little thing going on. Batman, anything with Hush was pretty great stuff going on there. Really liked Alan Moore's League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which is definitely much better than the movie, and definitely a little bit more graphic than the movie, especially with the which I was actually really stunned about. This is a spoiler, so skip ahead a couple seconds, where Jekyll essentially rapes the Invisible Man.
Wow.
Yeah, it is really sick, and I hope people came in on it. It's really sick. It's just really twisted. So I'd recommend that one. But I was having trouble because I was having trouble remembering storylines. Oh, one I would recommend just on the art alone, because I can't really remember the story too well. Hulk Tempest Fugit.
Oh, yes.
Lee Weeks has the best representation of the Hulk. I love how he draws Hulk, and I actually met him at a con, and I actually talked to him for about a good 10 to 15 minutes. He's actually one of the nicest guys in the world. He stood there and he sat and talked to me and my girlfriend at the time, and she was an artist, and he wouldn't let us leave without seeing some of her artwork and everything, and he kind of gave her his 2 cents, and he did a couple magic tricks for us, and he asked if I knew some people. He asked where I lived, and I told him up in the Scranton area. He's like, "Oh, do you know this person?" I was like, "Yeah, actually I do. He's my next door neighbor." So he's and he named him, he put out his name. I was like, "Hey, he lives right next door to me." So he's pretty freaking impressive. I'm wondering if I go back and talk to him if he would remember me or not. But he's an impressive individual. If you ever see him at a con, I'd definitely go up and check him out. So
see if he knows your neighbor as well.
Yeah,
he just knows everyone's neighbor.
Yeah, Greg, you were mentioning some Batman stuff there. Made me think of Nightfall too. I almost forgot all about that one with Bane.
Yeah, that's pretty good run, and that's
kind of around where I was starting to get into Batman a little bit back in the day, I think. I wasn't into comics too much, and then I started getting here and there, and so I got a couple before that, but I think I was really getting into it at Nightfall. Was that where I was really getting into comics?
One I'll mention real quick, too, just because it was Captain Britain in the MI-13. It was really ran for like 12 issues or so. It got canceled because it wasn't doing really well, but it was such a good comic. It got a lot to the mysticism of Captain Britain, and also some of the best writing for Blade ever. Like, they really made Blade into a cool character. It sadly got canceled because of lack of interest for it. It started like right during the Civil War, not Civil War, Secret Invasion, but I really liked that comic. But we probably could sit here all day naming comics. I'm sure we can do this again and in some capacity. But like we like to do every episode, we like to end each week with a letter. And I'm up this week, and I was thinking, well, I wanted to do something positive. I think a lot of our letters lately have been on the negative side for other reasons, myself included.
I've been bumming everybody out. I'm sorry.
Well, I did one too. I had one on Internet Trolls, so we've all been there. Not that that's a bad thing. That's kind of what it's for. But I just wanted to go into a little bit of a different direction. So I'm like, well, who can I write a letter to that's positive? And with us doing comics this week, with the summer movie season coming out next weekend, we're going to have Spider-Man, we're going to have X-Men. We have a free comic book day coming up too. It's like, we're in the season of comics. So, well, you kind of have to write a letter to one man, kind of thanking him for this. Not that he's single-handedly responsible for where we are with comics, but he had a big part in it, and that, of course, is Stan Lee. I mean, think about it. We have X-Men and Spider-Man coming out next week, and he created both of those teams. So I figured I would send a letter down Stan Lee's way, just kind of thanking him for what he's done. So it's rather short, but I thought I'd go the opposite way of Stan Lee's writing and not break detail about every little thing. So here it goes. Any person who has picked up a comic and enjoyed the experience owes you a debt of gratitude. I know some claim you get more credit than you deserve, but hey, you created Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, the Hulk, the X-Men, Daredevil, and so many others, so I question those that have an issue laying praise on the work you have done. As we begin the summer movie season, it has been a treat to see all those characters you've come up with showing up on the big screen. What was once considered a childish hobby, or worse, a plague on the sanctity of our children, is now mainstream. There's a reason your characters have stood the test of time more than most. You made them relatable, to be humans with human problems. Maybe rag on the oversimplification of your writing style or your need to explain every minute detail, but the core of what makes those characters great happened there since the beginning. Even with all the characters you've invented, the best thing about you may be the joyous, larger-than-life personality that you have. A medium that tends to be full of introverted tweens who lack social cues has one of the loudest and gleeful people as their spokesperson. Honestly, if I have half the life as you do at your age, I would consider myself a lucky person. I could sit here all day and list everything that makes you a legend, and I'm sure you enjoy every single minute of it. But I think I can sum it up with this. Stan, you are the man. Enough said. Dan.
You missed something, Dan.
What'd I miss?
Excelsior!
Very true, very true.
Very nice.
General Grillissimo, or whatever he calls himself, I forget. I'm going rather long here. I think we tend to do that when we get into comics or get into our top fives. It's just the nature of the beast, I guess. But anything you guys have to add before we bring this episode to a close?
No, I've talked plenty for this episode.
All right. Well, if you want to get in contact with us, maybe you want to share your top fives or let us know things we should check out that, you know stories you feel are deserving of being mentioned that we didn't pick up, feel free to send us communication. There's lots of ways of getting in contact with us. You can email us at feedback@geekcastradio.com. We're on Twitter and on Facebook. Just search Talking in Circles, GCRN. We're there. You can comment on the episode post at geekcastradio.com. So all those different ways to get in contact with us. But thank you for joining us for this week. We'll be back next week, same time, same channel, same website. You know the deal. But for now,
this has been Chuck.
This has been Greg, or Riza, doing a horrible Asian impersonation.
And this has been Dan, and we've been Talking in Circles. We will see you next week.
Cue music.
Now I just got to think of what clip to play, because comics don't speak to you when you're reading them, so it's harder to insert clips.
Maybe some random Stan Lee clips.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Just every time we do end one of our explanations of a comic book, it's just him going, Excelsior!
Stop smiling. This is serious.
Hey there, true believers.
Yeah. He is a legend. You ever see the documentary with him? Like, with great power comes great responsibility, or whatever.
I think I've watched about 10 billion of his documentaries.
Yeah.
I think they just place him in the documentaries like they place him into Marvel movies. Like he's going to be in a Ken Burn movie.